Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. My guest this week is 18GoodGuy. This will be our first anonymous show, so if you're watching the video, you'll just see 18GoodGuy's avatar along with my face on the other side. 18GoodGuy is an advocate for protagonism, wholesome with an edge, and not a soft mentor. You guys can look him up on Instagram at 18GoodGuy. Get some great memes, some great content. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, pass these episodes along. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. All right, 18GoodGuy. Welcome to Lesser Known Operators.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Well, thanks for coming on. We have worked through some technical difficulties I haven't had before, so now we get to do the exact same thing, but a second time. So, what's that movie line? I think, why not have two for twice the price?
Exactly. Rehearsals are a big part of planning, so it's all good.
That is true, right? I think Patton said, planning is indispensable, but plans are useless, right?
Exactly.
I think one of those World War II
Something like that.
generals,
Yeah.
bad motherfuckers, right?
Exactly.
Full of wisdom and shit. So
Oh yeah.
for those who don't know at home, 18GoodGuy 18 is our military occupational specialty number. So all special forces guys are 18 series. And my friend here has taken it one further. So he's special forces and a good guy. Let's go through that again. Do you consider yourself to be a good guy, or is that the hope?
So I think it's for other people to decide for me. If I just go around touting that I'm good, then it's probably less believable. But what I try to do is espouse the things that I believe are good, and let other people make that decision for me.
Most of my information that I've gotten from you was from your memes,
Mm-hmm.
which very good, by the way.
Thank you.
And you do give off a positive vibe, uplifting. Uh, I tend to be a little more, I don't know, positive and negative, but all in jokes. I like the
Yep.
dark humor, but like the one I posted yesterday, I was even looking at it. I'm like, that's a little far from my page, but this actually happened in real life, so it's still it's me. But is that what you see when you kind of make a meme? You're like, yeah, this is me. This is me on a meme.
But absolutely. I mean, everyone's got their flavor. Um, I will definitely say that there is what is the word I'm looking for? The notion that if I'm going to be, because a lot of my friends know this is me, my command team knows about this and everything. It's like if I'm going to be spouting this rhetoric about being good or achieving or whatever, then I got to do it. So it's kind of a forcing function in that way as well. That I'm trying to put my best foot forward of myself, but it's also making me try to live up to the what I'm trying to say. So it's kind of you got to do what you say if you're going to say what you're going to do.
Yeah, especially as a Green Beret, right? Because you fuck up and everybody knows about it
Oh yeah.
in group, and it's always a big deal, and you can ruin your reputation. Because my audience has heard this before, you're always being assessed, and when you get to group, no matter what level you are, either somebody is drawing an opinion of you and how you carry yourself. So yeah, I guess, let's see. When I was in group, I got out of group in 18. I got to group at 15, 14, something like that. Social media really wasn't what it is now. Everything's come, I mean, it's 10 years ago, but
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like that long ago, but it's way different.
extremely.
And I'll scroll through Instagram and I'll see people in uniform posting shit. And that blows me away that is allowed to happen, as long as they say, oh, not the opinions of the DOD. I get it if you're a recruiter, but just normal soldiers posting shit and their command is okay about that. What do you think about that side of things where they're just totally open with it?
Uh, Now, granted, I don't know the what the UCMJ says, and I don't know what the regulations specifically state on. We get our little social media policies that are very chopped up and filtered for us, so we don't get the actual statutes. What I will say is I do think that there is a responsible way to do it. It was, I can't recall who specifically said it, but it was uh, put forward in a way that I really enjoyed about a year ago when I heard it. They said, we don't need silent professionals, we need quiet professionals, which is, our whole model, which I enjoy, that you can still do the social media thing, garner the attention that we need to recruit people in this day and age, but do it responsibly and do it in a way that doesn't violate operational security and doesn't jeopardize the safety of your guys, your mission, the whole nine. So that I try to keep that at the forefront of what I'm doing. Um, and we've seen cases of people that do the inverse of that, and there is punitive action. But I think there, as in all things, that there is definitely a way you can strike balance in it, um, to utilize the uh, quote unquote authority of the position, whilst also not utilizing it to scrupulous ends, which are self-aggrandizement, clout, grifting, if you will. Not saying that all of them do that, or even a specific number or anything, but there are very obviously some that do it, and it's one of the things that I specifically want to avoid.
Mm. Yeah, the quiet professionals, silent professionals things keeps coming up, right? Because you'll learn once you become a civilian, if you're not making any noise, no one's going to hear you and no one's going to care about you. They'll, in general care about you, but if they don't know who they are, they can't help you out and they can't call you or talk to you or look at your stuff. So
Yeah.
that's that's the real big thing. And one guy that was on here, he said it was kind of that fed off of the Vietnam era guys. When they got back, they were shit on. And
Yeah.
so they just kept to themselves. They didn't say anything. They're like, I don't want any of that smoke, or however the kids say it, but
Right.
they don't want any of that attention. So they just kept everything to themselves. They didn't talk about what they did. They didn't talk about where they went, any of the mission. And they just did their job and then faded off into obscurity. And then, we had a couple skirmishes back and forth and then Desert Storm, but big gap up until 9/11.
Yeah.
And, where, what does these units do and things like that. And, like especially some like tier one units like Delta, right? My wife and I were watching that Netflix special, Surviving Black Hawk Down, and she asked some question about Delta, and I said this was really America's introduction to that unit, because if Black Hawk Down never happened, nobody would know who the fuck Delta was. And now you've got all this social media and these eyes on you and everything, analyzing what you say. Is there a, you know, thought, is what's the reason you're keeping your actual name and face out of the limelight? Because there's implications if you do go to a special mission unit and things like that of already being, is some of that on your mind, or you just kind of want to separate the man from the position?
I'm trying to do it out of a matter of, I guess you could say, social responsibility within the unit. Uh, Even though I have an end state and end goal, what I would like to do while I'm still operational, I would like to keep those two worlds separate, delineated as much as I possibly can. So I just believe it's incumbent upon me to keep, not because once I'm found, then my friends are also reachable, and it's I feel it's just a responsible thing to do at this point.
Yeah.
And eventually, I try to, make no false claims or anything. One of my big dreams post military is to be a writer. It's been one of my dreams since I was a kid. So eventually, the mask will come off, and but what I just, at the present moment, I don't think it's a responsible thing to do.
Yeah, it's just one less thing to worry about as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah, and I've seen
Especially,
people do it, and they, pardon me,
yeah.
I've seen people do it, and I don't know if it's detracted from or added to their capability to do the mission. I really don't know, and I know it happens. Just my gut feeling tells me that it's not the right time.
Yeah. There's one in particular. I was talking to a team sergeant down Texas National Guard, and I
Mm.
said, "Hey, you sure you want to do a show you're still in?" And he goes, "You know, that motherfucker's always down here with his camera crew, filming everything we do in all of our training. I can do a podcast if he can tell everybody else what everything, all of our secrets and all what we're doing." So
Yeah.
I think that's the far extreme of it. And I'm not going to name, you probably know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to name anybody because he's got his thing going on and shit like that. And that's
Right.
not what my show is about. But,
Yep.
that's the far end of it where people, that gets the most notoriety, and everybody kind of draws their opinion off of the most popular 4 or 5 people in our regiment.
Absolutely.
Do you get that a lot? Are those people brought up to you? And
Constantly. But one of the things, especially because, and I will say a lot of the individuals that are very public, they do have, you know, with any of their shortcomings or drawbacks or whatever you want to call it, or, you know, even if you get a bad taste in your mouth about some of the things they do, it has to be acknowledged that they have contributed to the regiment in some way. They are inspiring people in some way, and that there is some form of good that can come out of it. And that these guys grew up in an age where they got a lot of relevant experience. Whereas like I don't have that. Like I said, I was reserves for a long time. I've got one operational deployment as a GB, and it was a non-combat. So the what I'm going to be able to bring to the table is also significantly different than those guys, and I have to be aware of that. I don't have any crazy cool war stories or whether embellished or not. I just don't have anything like that. So what I do have is hopefully the value that was able to get me to where I'm at. And if I am called upon in that moment to do to conduct combat, or whether it's an operational deployment or what have you, that the value that I've been able to build within myself is able to be on full display. Um, but I feel like a lot of people get the notion with these popular figures that they have value because of their accolade. In our case, the Green Beret, and some others, the Trident or the Scarlet Beret or whatever you want to call it. Whatever accolade they have, they like, oh, that's what gives this person value. And I really, really want to flip that on its head. It's no, that's not what makes me valuable. I was able to display value, and that value is what allowed me to achieve the accolade. Uh, Even my dad had even asked me at one point. There was another project that I wanted to get involved in, and he's like, "Is that going to make people respect you more? Is that going to make people, think that you're a bigger badass, or you know, just a better version of you?" I was like, "Well, no, not a whole lot of people know about it." He's like, "Well, why are you doing it? Is it for you? Is it for them?" I was like, "Well, it's so a lot of people do chase that external recognition of the accolade, and I think it's at least in the position I'm in, that it's very potentially the wrong way to go about it.
yeah, you're right with the bringing, because there's a second and third order effects for everything, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's very popular, and I use it, the comparison of CrossFit. Do I do CrossFit? Yes. Do I like CrossFit? No. Has CrossFit got more people's hands on barbells than any other physical sport ever in the history of working out?
Yeah.
No. It's done more for athletics and for people's health than anything ever, bar none, fucking dead stop, right?
Yeah.
These guys have gotten thousands of Green Berets or people, civilians, to go, I want to go do that. And if they make
Yeah.
it, they make it. If they don't, they don't. And that's commendable in itself.
Yeah.
What
Exactly.
happens is guys' personas change because they're living this different lifestyle, and then they're not
Yeah.
living the same reality that we are. And we have to view them through our lens of what we think of things, and they're living on a different planet.
Right.
So the perspective's not the same. That's why I don't trash any of them.
Yeah.
It
Same.
sucks. You kind of blur the lines of true and false and things like that. But
Yeah.
I just go, they won. They beat the system, and this is tough to do. Sitting down here and all this shit, and when you're first starting out making memes and reels and learning all the technology, we had a bunch of technological problems here before, and you don't have anybody to ask questions. Those guys figured that shit out. So
Yeah.
that part of it, good on them. And so much
Right.
fucking, to beat these algorithms and these fucking things, moderators and all this shit, and become famous and, make a name for yourself is impressive in itself. So
Right. Well, the main thing is I don't know them. All I see is what everyone else sees is, like you said, the persona. And maybe the cameras turn off and you're behind closed doors and they're a completely different person. We have no idea. So I also take a stance of, I don't really talk about them. Positively or negatively. It's they're going to do their thing. I'm going to do mine. And you just hope that who they are either aligns with what they're saying, or that behind the curtain, it's even better. That your worst expectations are not met and your best expectations are exceeded.
Yeah. That's like with this, right? It's just you and me having a conversation about whatever we want to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'll have anybody on here, anybody who wants to come on. And that's what I want the base of this show to be is if you were a special operations dude or dudette at any time and you carried that little soft identifier in your MOS, you can send me a message and we will 100% record an episode, no matter what. That's
Right.
the base of the show. I don't care how big the show gets or how busy our schedule is or whatever it may be. If you have that and you have something you want to talk about, send me a message and I promise you we will record an episode. That's what I want the base of the show to be as, so I can help as many people as I can when they get out, because everybody's been so supportive of me trying to do my thing and falling down and getting back up. And really mainly because, as I told you before we started recording, I only got to be on a team for 90 days or some shit like that, right? And then it was over. I had to go to the B team, which is still a team, but it's not an ODA. And I could have got medically retired that same year. I could have been gotten my beret and gotten medically retired all in 12-month span. And Sergeant Major and the commander, they just said, we're not going to let that happen. I don't know why. Well, I didn't really know them and they didn't know me, but for some reason they saw something. And I got to spend 3 more years in regiment and learn all the shit and build myself, from what I'm seeing, a good reputation while I was there, because everyone I was working with still I'm in contact with and still friends with. But like that's supportiveness. That's what I want to give back to whoever needs help later on down the road, and then they'll do it for the next group of people, the next generation.
Absolutely.
Um, I think our regiment's taken a beating over the last 20 years, and we've got drinking problem, mental health problems, all kinds of shit, and we need guys like you, uplifting and happy, making, trying to bring people up, and the fitness and all this, and build people up instead of us, bringing ourselves down. We're getting a little, off track though there, but what do you think about? I mean, it's been rough, and I don't have any combat experience, and it doesn't sound like you do either. But a group as a whole was relied on to be a hammer for the last 25 years, and it's taken a toll on every Green Beret, at least every Green Beret that's come on this show's personal and professional life to a almost disastrous end. What do you think is coming up for regiment? Because you're in the younger you're the youngest generation, right? Are guys taking their career more seriously as you're seeing them come in?
Uh, I guess more than the career aspect, I believe that there is a paradigm shift in taking longevity more seriously. I think that's pretty evident with the introduction of a lot of the human performance and wellness teams. Obviously, formerly Thor 3. There's a lot of initiatives. They're actually studying different, like operator syndrome. They're doing sleep studies on guys. It's available to us to see physical therapists whenever. I had one come and meet me in a foreign country on deployment and gave me Graston treatment. There are resources that are available to us now, um, both on the mental and physical side, that are just completely aimed at longevity. And while I think that our operational needs put that on the back burner sometimes, I think it is much more of a priority than it used to be. And that focus on the element of longevity in the human domain does allow us to be a little more focused and intensive on our careers if we so desire. But you're always going to be out of balance somewhere. That's just life, whether it's in regiment or you're an accountant. There are going to be some things that are getting more of your time, that deserve it at that moment, and there are going to be things that probably also deserve a lot of your time that aren't going to be getting as much of it. So it just really depends on what your training cycle looks like, what your operational cycle looks like, where you're at. Um, but I do. I was just speaking to a guy in my team room this morning about it. I have 100% faith that when the next conflict happens, that Green Berets will step up. Special operations as a whole will step up, and that they will be capable because they always have been. And even Nestor, Agamemnon's advisor in the Trojan War, he was consulting all of the generals around Agamemnon, and he said, obviously paraphrasing, and it's exactly like this, but he said, Achilles, we have Achilles, we can clearly win this thing, but just so you guys know, the guys that I used to fight with, oh man, every single one of them would blow Achilles out of the water. So the number one, the archetypal best warrior there's ever been was doubted by the older generation. Um, because obviously you look back and see what was accomplished, and there's no way that these younger, softer, less capable people could ever do that. But I have full faith and confidence with some of these superhumans that I have had the privilege of rubbing elbows with, that no matter what comes down the pipeline towards us, that we will be able to handle it. Because they're the best people I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, Green Berets are going to be top of the mark in any generation, right? A guy I had on, he said, you guys, I don't know if our generation would be able to keep up with yours. I said, if you swapped them, you would just be the top of the range for that
Yeah,
because you grew up in that environment.
100%.
The person, the Green Beret doesn't make the man makes the Green Beret, or however that phrase goes.
Exactly.
But, the attitude, I had no idea before I started the page this year and the podcast and everything that there were so many special operations preparatory courses on the
Yeah, yeah.
civilian side, right?
Hmm.
I had no idea. And there's just one after another of fitness plans to get selected. And if there's so many, there must be just a huge market for people picking these things up because there's just one after another after another. They got like huge followings. That I think is a sign because I had never heard of that at all. Because when I got in the
Yeah,
army, I say this a long time ago. It's not a long time ago, 14 years ago. That wasn't a thing.
yeah,
There was, hey, I'm going to go to the library, and I signed my piece of paper, and 2 weeks in hell. That was my preparatory course
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
going to selection. Was watching that and going, okay, I need to be ready for those things,
yeah,
and then training that in the gym in my, you know, whatever, just making shit up.
yeah,
And now there's guys putting out. I had one on the show a couple weeks ago, and they've got structured plans of workouts leading up to uh, JTAC, or not JTAC, CCT or PJ or selection, or the big one, dive school, which I see, yeah, a need for that because I was on. There's no time to get ready for dive school. You just suck it up.
yeah,
It's all on your own time. Um, but that's got to be a sign of the things because there wouldn't be so many of them if people weren't going to them to get things like that. And maybe that's for a rise of the internet and the availability with social media of trying to do that. Or I saw another statistic the other day that's had the generations, right? And this new generation doesn't drink.
yeah,
So, well, if they're not drinking, what are they doing? So maybe it's just another, the next generation is going to be fitter and stronger with the things like that. But as you said, nothing's in balance. When one thing goes the other way, other things are lost. What do you think that balance is going to be?
Well, I know that our recruitment pool gets smaller every year, um, but that's a societal problem writ large. But I do believe that those who have that personality are going to be drawn towards this profession always. And that even if we miss our mark on quantity, I believe we are absolutely hitting our mark on quality for the most part. There are always people that will weed through the cracks, unfortunately, but those people usually don't last very long, as you know. Um, But I do think that as we become more educated on average as a regiment, that again, our quality of each candidate will go up. I do believe that with advances in medical technology and fitness knowledge, again, these preparatory programs, and even just physical training, again, in a more broad sense, that these people will continue to raise the standard. For example, I kind of had a similar situation to you when I was at my reserve unit. When I got myself together, I ended up being the top guy at the unit. And then when I switched to active duty, I did so on the 18 X-ray program. So I went through all 22-week OSUT again as an E5 uh, during COVID, which was cool. And then airborne prep course and everything. And I had gotten double Achilles tendonitis on day 3 of the prep course. It hit me, and prep course it was 5 weeks at that time. I'm under the impression it's the same still, but I was hurting. It was some of the worst pain I've ever had, but I gutted through it. We did our last 5 mile, and that was the fastest 5 mile I'd ever run. I was so scared of failing. The adrenaline just carried me through, and I ran at 35:30, and I was in the back 5 out of 200. So the level of physicality for these aspirants is just absolutely unbelievable. And I was only 27 at the time, so I wasn't old. I was right in the prime of being able to hang with everyone. But these people, they're just unrealistic. And I think that it's easy to look at society and what again is being offered on a mass scale for the military and be like, man, this is a fairly abysmal looking situation. But if people could only peer behind the curtain and see the people who are still reaching towards the top, it is absolutely unbelievable what a lot of these people are capable of. Uh, again, I wish I could mention people by name and specifically talk about what they do, but so, yeah, I was the number one guy at my old unit, and these kids blew me out of the water. Truly, truly blew me out of the water. It was humbling and motivating all at the same time because then you have something to chase.
Yeah, it's unbelievable when you see. Because I was fit when I went to selection. I was pretty
Yeah,
fit. But I was private. Didn't know what I was doing, but I was there. I was,
yeah,
wasn't in the back, wasn't in the front. I still, to this day, the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in the Army was at selection, day one, Jimmy. I'm in wave 2 because I'm at the end of the alphabet.
mhm,
So they start us and we start 2 minutes later. So I got 2 minute gap, right? I was about 5/8, maybe 3/4 of the way down. Jimmy's already on his way back.
yeah,
He ran a 9 something 2 mile,
yeah,
and like, just jogging it out. I I went. That was the only time in the whole course. So that's day one, right? Where I went,
yeah,
what the fuck did I get myself into? And then,
yeah,
I was fine because all you have to run is like a 13 minute, or no, you had 14 minutes or some shit like that.
yeah,
And you realize running has nothing to do with it. But I was talking to some of the X-rays, and they go, "Oh no, you can put the ruck on his back; he'll do the same thing." And I go, "You got to be fucking kidding me!" Yeah, he smokes the cadre. He turned Sopsy into a smoke the cadre fest.
yeah,
Like, and there were guys like that, but then also you'd have rocket scientists and guys
yeah,
that got bored being Wall Street
exactly,
day traders that making lots of money, and they're like, "I'm just gonna go be a Green Beret on board and shit like that."
exactly.
So it's crazy the level of people that you meet. And but on the other side of it, I mean, you had, I wouldn't call it regular Army experience, but you had Army experience beforehand. I I do think X-rays miss out on that, being a private in the regular Army, that experience of, the customs and courtesy of how the military actually works, for better or for worse. Because it sucks to be a private, but you learn a lot about, you know, discipline and kind of how shitty things are. And if you love the regular Army, good for you. I'm glad you love it. Good. It's great. That's great. But it does fucking suck. And the order and of things, but you learn how the things are. And so when they get to group as 18 extras, I think some of that is lost, but maybe they make up for in other areas. And a lot of guys that, most of the team sergeants now coming up are 18 X-rays because that was the majority of the field of the guys that stayed in and have made it that far. So nothing against you, but I do think, a little bit is missed on there. What do you think about that?
Actually, I don't mind it. Um, I'm very much of the mind that I'm not asking a Green Beret to be a regular soldier. I'm not asking him to be like the big army guys. I'm asking him to be a Green Beret. Um, but I feel that way in a lot of aspects that even my contemporaries don't agree with me, and that's totally fine. We each have our own opinions. Um, but I'm not nearly as concerned with his knowledge of customs and courtesies and standing at parade rest and calling everyone sergeant. And I don't care about that as much as I care about him scoring a 2+2+ in his language, which most of them can't do. Yeah, I don't care about his haircut or the way he folds his uniforms or wears his boots. I don't care about that nearly as much as I care about him being able to deliver a block of instruction to a partner force. Now I'm asking him to do extraordinary things, so I'm of the mind that not much of the leadership is these days, especially in a peacetime military. But my personal view on it is that if we're being asked to do special things, then you have to understand that the type of person is going to be has to have special exemptions. Maybe not has to, that might be the wrong word, but there are special exemptions, and there is a special type of personality, and that crucible isn't absolutely necessary. I think the model has proven that crucible isn't necessary. It can be formative, and it can absolutely be beneficial, because again, having been a private service and an X-ray, I can tell you being a private does absolutely suck. And you get it pushed in all the time, and it's not fun. But there is an element of character that can be built, but I don't think it's the nearly the only avenue that character can be built. I think you can still suffer, still undergo hardship, still fail safely, and still get the full spectrum of experience that you need to be a a good Green Beret without having that big army time. And I've got a lot of friends where sure, they didn't get smoked as a private, but they came in with a master's degree in electronics, and then all of a sudden we're a Charlie. So they have two specialties, and they're doing the Echoes job better than the Echoes are. So there's gives and again, nothing is in balance. There's gives and takes with it all. But from what I have seen, I don't believe that the X-rays have a problem with a lack of character due to their inexperience within the military.
Well, as you said, you got your way of thinking, I got mine, but with
Absolutely.
different experiences. Like I had my
Yeah.
career, and I saw the things that and then you see something that completely different. And
Yeah.
all of my information, everybody listening, take that with a grain of salt because sometimes I don't even know if I remember the things correctly of what I did in the army. But I do think everybody should have to suck dick as a private for 6 months at least. Anyway,
Totally fair.
what was it that made you say, you know what, I want to go to selection? What? Why'd you make that decision?
So, I guess it's just a small amount of back. So I'd wanted to join the military since I was 12. First told my dad then, and I wanted to be an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. And I very, in my opinion, correctly assessed at that time, though, that I didn't have what it took physically to become a Marine. So I chose the Army, and I went to enlist, chickened out, and then 6 months later, right before the end of my senior year, I was like, I'm making a big mistake. So I ended up enlisting anyway. Still on track to do ROTC, become an officer. So I chose the reserves so I could do their simultaneous membership program. And then I was offered to become I had a very finite window. I only wanted to miss one semester of college. So they said, you can either be a cook or a psychological operations specialist for this window. And I was like, well, I really don't want to be a cook. I don't know what psychological operations is, but that sounds like a much better option. So I chose that. Honestly, I would have done many number of MOSs just to, again, get me into the simultaneous membership program so I can get that degree and get my commission. Ended up not attending college, um, but when I was at AIT for PsyOp, or this was when it was still on the reserve side, the individual training portion was still at Fort Bragg. So we got there, and we had, it was a, at the time it was all special operations PsyOp guys that were our cadre. I'm not sure if it's the same now because it's moved to Fort Jackson, but regardless, we had a lot of a wealth of experience. Again, this is 2013, so this is mid GWAT. A lot of these guys are deployed numerous times, and they were excellent instructors, and they were absolutely destroying us. It was like my third day there, and they were just running us into the ground like I had never experienced before. And our two medics for the training company were 18 Deltas, Green Berets. I had never seen one before. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that they're, my cadre were red berets and these guys were green berets. I'd heard the name, but didn't know. And we're doing front back goes, which for those that don't know or listening, when they yell front, you do push-ups, back, you do flutter kicks and go, you get up and run in place. And we're probably an hour, hour and a half in. My knees aren't coming very high all of a sudden. And one of the medics, one of the Green Berets walks up to me. He's shorter than me, so he's looking up at me. And he's like, "You're pretty damn weak, aren't you?" I was like, "Oh, yes, Sergeant." He's like, "You're not going to make it, man." I was like, "Oh my gosh." And in my head, I was like, I don't know these guys, but he seems like a hardo. And he doesn't think I'm going to make it. So I really don't know what my future looks like here. But that was my first interaction with the Green Beret. And then, being around the Fort Bragg footprint, we got to come in contact with them all the time. And, our cadre talked about their mission set versus ours and what have you. And my dad just mentioned it to me a little while back when he came for my graduation. Apparently, I pointed to like a group of Green Berets. I was like, Dad, those are the guys. That's the one I want to be. Like, those are the cool guys. And though I don't recall that, I apparently had it in my heart at that point. When I got to my unit, I got flagged right away for being overweight. Um, but I kind of talked about like, yeah, maybe I'll go to selection someday. I'll try for one of the National Guard units, something like that. And some of the people at my unit with a little more experience, would chide me and call me 18 X-ray for a while. But I got up to 290 pounds. I was overweight, and so it was a mockery. And then once I decided to get in shape, I asked myself, I didn't have a whole lot going on civilian side. I was just kind of aimless. And I asked myself, what's the hardest thing I think I could do? Try to aim for that. And I decided that being Green Beret was probably a pretty dang good starting point. So it was the initial seed was planted very early into my Army career, but the actual decision didn't come until about 6.5 years in.
Mm. In the reserves.
Yeah. Yep.
What was so after you? For everyone listening at home, I'm trying to be a better explainer.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
because I don't know as well, really, and if I tried to give this definition, I don't think I could.
Yeah.
What is psyops or psychological operations?
So psychological operation is marketing. The best psyop in the entire world is done in the commercial sector. You find out everything you possibly can about who you would like to message towards in order to change a thought pattern, a behavior. In the commercial sector, obviously, it's usually a purchase. So advertisers will find out everything they can about you. That's why data is such a big seller these days. And then they can, once they find out the demographic that they believe is susceptible to the action that they desire, then they market to that demographic according to the demographical information that they have acquired about those people. So essentially, it's just marketing. The U.S. has a goal. We find in a certain area, we find out whatever we can about the local population. Are they able to fulfill this goal? Are they suitable to fulfill this goal? And then we find out how to message them. A great example was during the first Gulf War. We wanted the Iraqi army to surrender. We didn't want to. We try to do that in essentially every military campaign we can. If you don't have to fire shots, then why would you? So we tried to think, well, what would be good enough for these guys to surrender? There's the typical messaging that's been used since World War One, very heavily in World War II. Is you're fighting for no reason. Go back home. You got your wife waiting for you, your kids. Everything is, you know, this is not where you're supposed to be. That wasn't working really well. And so, interestingly enough, what they did was they put a banana on leaflets and dropped them. And the banana was a thought to be such a luxury item of food by the people of the Iraqi army that literally thousands defected. They thought, oh my gosh, we're suffering under this Ba'athist regime and we were kind of oppressed and we really don't have a whole lot. And then we're offered this high luxury item, a banana. Oh my gosh, we're going to be treated like kings if we surrender. And so they did. And it's all about knowing everything you possibly can about what makes the other person tick and trying to utilize that.
That's a big difference from being a cook. It's hard to
Yeah.
believe that those were your two options,
Well,
that or a cook, which you don't even have to give a definition for what a cook is. It's
yeah.
in the word.
Right. Well, and honestly, psychological operations, when I had gone to with my recruiter to kind of interview at the unit before I actually shipped out, and the first sergeant at the time even say, I don't know if you thought this was like psychology or behavioral health or something. He's like, but it's absolutely not that. And I didn't say it at the time. I was like, well, yeah, I thought maybe it'd be help people out. I really had no idea. So
Yeah, interesting two choices there.
yeah,
So hopefully that filled in some gaps. It did for me. I know, but it's not like something I had to keep up on. And somebody commented on one of the posts, was like, "What's civil affairs?" And I went, "I'm just going to leave that one alone. I don't fucking know." So
that's
I
fair.
not against anything that was civil affairs. I just never really
Yeah,
worked with anybody.
I
So
I love all of them. I just did a course that was about one third of each civil affairs, SOP, and SF, and it was awesome. Getting to know the inner workings of each of their jobs. Um, I think it's a shame that a lot of failed X-rays go to those regiments and still try to be X-rays because you know they have their specific function and it's a really freaking cool function, and they should be proud of it. But a lot of people will go there as young guys, feeling spurned or something, and they try to be SF still, and they're not. And it's okay that you're not, And if you want to come back, then try again. So unfortunately, they get a bad reputation sometimes in the community. But I love my civil affairs personnel. I love my side personnel. They got a really good part to play, and I think they're extremely valuable.
yeah, that's a good segue that I don't think we've brought up on the show before. Is what happens to 18 X-rays that don't make it? Where do they go after you know candidate you are a non-select?
Yeah.
What happens then?
So this information is about 4.5 years old at this point. So if it's changed, pardon my inaccuracy. Um, but there's a multitude of avenues. If your physical tests are high enough, regardless of the reason you are being dropped, sometimes they will offer other options on a limited or unlimited basis, just depending on the timing and circumstance. A lot of guys I know did not even attend SFAS and still got in these programs. But oftentimes, if the X-rays get dropped, they'll be offered to go over to the Ranger Assessment Selection Program. And a lot of guys are super successful over there. Again, these guys are physical specimens, so they're really prepared for the rigors of that assessment selection program. They do really well. Some other guys elect to stay at Bragg and go to the civil affairs course or the SIOP selection course. My prior understanding was that the civil affairs route was kind of closed off for a little bit. I don't know if that's changed, but I've got a couple good buddies that were not successful in the SF pipeline, but have had great success as active duty SIOP guys. Again, it's still special operations. I still think it's an excellent route. So then you have the other side where some people really don't want that kind of life, or they just ask, what's the quickest possible way that I can get back to selection? And usually their answer is go to an airborne unit, get a Ranger tab, or get promoted to E5. So a lot of guys will go down to the street to the 82nd or to the 173rd. You'll just go to some infantry unit. And then you have the largest minority, um, which is, or sorry, not the largest minority, the smallest minority, pardon, which is guys that get reclass needs in the Army. And that usually does not happen, but there are some rare instances. We even had a couple of guys that they got dropped and they volunteered to go over to RASP. And in the process of signing that new contract, they did not read the fine print. And their RASP contract was not as an infantryman 11 Bravo, but it was as a parachute rigger. So they went to RASP and got picked up and then became parachute riggers for a regiment. Related to an X-ray contract.
Oh, that
So
sounds horrible.
there are, of course, there are horror stories. But I am very much of the mind that if you're serious about it, those don't matter because statistics are everywhere. You know, you can look at the worsts, you can look at the typicals, but if you're really what's cut out for it and you really believe you are, that's not going to matter because you're going to have faith that what's going to happen and what needs to happen is going to happen. You know.
Yeah, the people that are going to pass, they pass.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
no matter what, they make
and
it.
some don't. You know, some don't, and that's
Well, they come back
that.
though.
Yeah,
They come back.
exactly. Yeah, and that's life, man. You know, once a door closes, knock on the next one or break it down, kick it in, whatever you got to do.
Yeah, I went twice. This is an unconfirmed story. I'm trying to get a hold of this guy, but he went twice while we were at Fort Sill. He was an officer. He
Yeah,
didn't make it, and I think I heard he went National Guard and made it.
yeah. One of my best friends is going for his third time next month. So you know, if you really want it that badly, then you're going to keep going until they slam the door in your face, and then you find something else. You know.
Yeah, that was my driving factor. Was the second time back to the election. Sergeant Major said something stupid, and I walked out of his office and said, "I never want to come back to this fucking place ever again."
Yeah.
And I just all gas selection was just empty the tank every day. Um, Unless I knew that I had to save some, but I knew what was going to happen because I had just been there. So
Right.
I had a plan going into it. So, whatever, it worked out that way. Maybe
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got selected the first time through anyway, before I get hurt. So it all worked out for the best. But
Yeah.
what was your driving factor going through selection? What was your mindset like? Because all the x-rays coming out of SOPSI are fucking studs.
As my dad, I uh I realized I don't want to say early on, but at some point that that I wasn't being the man that he raised me to be, that he always had envisioned that I would be. And once I started training for selection, I had this thing I was shooting at, and he knew about it, and I've always been extremely close with him. And but then in the 5 to 6 months before I left for active duty, we just got even closer and started talking about things that I didn't even know. I naively thought that maybe he didn't consider in life, and we just got so unbelievably close, and it was his pride in me, and just for going. You know, he would always tell me he was so proud, like, Dad, don't be yet. I didn't deserve it. I didn't do anything yet. But just his pride in me was the real. I envisioned him at the end of every single ruck, every single run, every event. He was standing there with me. So it was really the want to be the man that I knew that he had put the work into making me be. And so that was my biggest driving factor there.
I tell people a lot, uh, especially with I'm a very small fish, right? But still public figure, but very towards the bottom end right now, right? And I want to get towards the top end. And I've said the whole time anyone who's known who I am, there are people that look up to me that I have never met and will never meet. And you got to uphold some type of image for that, just for yourself, because
Yeah.
you don't owe them anything, but you can't let people down. And then as you have better relationships with people, you find out that oh, I didn't know you felt that way about me, or you're always rooting for, or I'm inspiring you. People message, I post my stuff, and people, and I don't know what to say when people are like, oh, you're inspiring me to do this or go to the gym. I go, I don't know how to, like, I feel great, but I just don't,
Yeah.
not to sound weird. I just kind of go, oh, that's awesome, because it really is.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm just trying to be a certain way, and unintentionally I've gotten myself into. I inspire people, so I got to work through those. Do you see that now? Or are you, because you said it's, you want to be the image you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah.
Is
Absolutely.
that always in the forefront of your mind, like
All,
putting
all the
out the
time.
best product?
Absolutely. So I read about it a couple times on the page. The metaphor I enjoy, and I guess the way I see it is the lighthouse. So many of us, especially young men, I believe, are lost at sea in some form or another, but socially, financially, romantically, whatever. These people are purposeless and without any place to go. And when you're adrift at sea, what is the thing you're hoping for is dry land, somewhere you can get your feet down and get your wits about you and be able to drive in some direction as opposed to just, being a drifter. And what's the sign of land is a lighthouse. When the skies are gray and the storms are raging, you see that beacon of light. And that's a relief for people. It's, oh my gosh, the respite is near, respite is possible. And so the what I'm trying to create is the image of the lighthouse, and then you train other people to be caretakers and say you can do this. You can shine your beacon of this here. Remember when you were out there? Remember how much it sucked and how lonely it was? If you want to do this thing, you have a responsibility to help those people too, just like you've been helped. To shine that beacon that you were once drawn to. So that's really the whole premise of it is trying to, as corny as it sounds, shine the light like it has been shown upon me by many, many people, and passing that small bit of goodness that was so freely given to me on to the next people.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Just keep passing it on, and be grateful, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the number one thing.
but as a previous guest said, the difficulty isn't earning the beret; it's earning the right to wear the beret every day, right? And man, it's a lot of work to get that damn thing. And then to sum it up as it's way harder to keep it is something else. Um,
Yeah.
where were you on both sides of that? Getting to it and then keeping it.
Yeah, I messed it up so many times getting there. Um, there were a number of times where I didn't think I was going to get it. Um, and there's been a number of times where I messed it up on the other side and I did the wrong thing or didn't do enough of the right thing, or I looked over and my buddy was doing way more of the right thing than I was doing. Um, but from what I can ascertain for myself and just the experiences again of the friends that I'm with, because I don't have I guess the opinions of the group writ large, because there's six more groups out there that I don't have contact with. Um, I believe that the what really differentiates a good Green Beret from just a normal one that kind of goes through the motions and gets by is just curiosity and a desire to get better. I know it's so cliche, but it really is true. You do find people even in these quote unquote elite spaces that are pretty regular in terms of motivation, drive, determination, and what they are willing to do in order to improve the circumstance of the team themselves. And I don't believe that every selfish action is negative. I do believe that, again, the rising tide raises all ships, and that there are ways that you can focus on self improvement that will bring the team up. And then there are times to be completely selfless and focused just on the team at a detriment to yourself. But with all that said, I think guys need to understand that when they set out on this path, they will fail, they will mess up, they will have times where they're going to doubt their ability to do it all. And there are going to be times where they're going to think crazy things that they didn't think they would ever pop in their mind. I never once wanted to quit. Never, not a single time did I think to myself, man, I'm thinking about it. But there was a time in SUT, and I was again, just speaking about this with my buddies on the last field exercise we had. There was a moment in SUT where we're walking, small unit tactics, for those unfamiliar. We're walking through the woods of North Carolina. The ruck's 90 pounds. It's July, 100% humidity. And we've been doing it for 4 weeks already, and it's miserable and it sucks and you hate it and you're full of bug bites and poison ivy and everything is just, you're like, this is about as bad as it gets. It can't get way worse, FYI. But
It can
I,
always,
it can
for a
always get
reference
worse.
at home, it can
Yeah,
always
it can
get
always
way
get worse.
worse.
There was one day I thought to myself, I'm like, dude, if I just twisted my ankle, I could get out of here. If I just tore my ACL or something, dude, I could get out of here. I could have a warm bed. I could, I could have reprieve. And then the next day on my birthday, I got bursitis in my knee. My knee swelled the size of a softball overnight. And the medic came and looked at it. And he's like, dude, that set onset pretty fast. That might have gone septic. So they pulled me out, sent me to the Womack Hospital in Fort Bragg, and I'm stinking. I got a grubby little beard, field beard. I'm in a boonie hat. I'm no patches. I'm just disgusting. And I walk into this nice, clean hospital, and this very sweet attendant looked me up and down, and her jaw dropped. I said, I apologize for everything that you're experiencing with me right now. I was like, but I need to see a doctor about this. And I had to sit in the waiting room for about 6 hours. All I could think was how terrified I was that this opportunity was going to be taken from me. So even in those moments where that weak voice crept up and was like, "Oh, dude, if something bad happens, you could get out of this." Um, and then the moment that was threatened, it was, "Oh my god, how could I be so stupid to think that way?" You know. And now, like when we're in the field with the guys, we make fun of it. Dude, let's. You want to hit my knee with your rifle or something? You want to break my ankle real quick so I don't have to do this rock with you. So now it's we chide each other with it, but it's the whole point of that is people their mind's going to go to places you didn't think that they could, and you're going to do things that you didn't think you were going to be capable of doing. I remember carrying that log at selection was probably, in my opinion, I know everyone has their own thing. In my opinion, that's the worst, not worst, let's say, the most taxing 6 hours of my life. And if you had told me you're going to do this for 6 hours, the first time I picked it up, it was only one guy my size and myself that were able to pick up the back end of this log. Everyone else was kind of dragging it. So we are like, okay, we'll stay on the back end of this thing. And the first lift, holy crap, this is freaking heavy. And if you had told me at the beginning of that event, yeah, you're going to do this for 6 hours, I might not have been able to do it. I might
They,
have.
I hope some cadre is listening right now and takes that little piece and now starts telling students you're going to do this for
Yeah.
6 hours.
Yeah. Well,
That's a
if
great
they say
tactic
that,
right there.
if they say
Yeah,
that, it'll be even longer.
yeah.
But it's, and there's another instance where it was the last night with the last team out. Everyone had gotten done on that team weekday for, I think they were all the rest of them were done by like 5:30. And we were going out on our last leg when the last team was coming in because we had messed up so badly. And by 8:30, we were a couple clicks away from the rest of Camp McCall. And I thought to myself, surely he's going to call this off soon. We got the truck coming up. We got all this, the D lab. We got all these things. He's got it. He's bluffing. He didn't bluff a bit. And we did the whole thing and came back. And you're going to be so surprised at how far you could push yourself. Um, and even looking back, sometimes I'm like, how the heck did I do that? You know. But
Yeah, I I I think about that a lot too, because I saw another, short, and the guy was saying, being prepared for the different phases. I just think I showed up and rose to the occasion every time, and then went back
100%.
down to being a normal dude after it was over.
Yeah. And
I
I
had
would,
a group of fucking studs that we were all
yeah,
buddies, and we just crushed
it's
everywhere we
huge.
went.
Yeah. And I was just speaking with somebody today about it that I really, really, really don't believe in the phrase, you won't rise to the occasion, you'll fall to your lowest level of training. I think that is one of the worst statements ever put forth because I've done so many things now in this career that I have never trained for that there's no way you can train for it. It's how can you train for the pain of a log in your hand for 6 hours? You can't. You can try, but you're never going to do it. You're gonna stop. And so I do believe people rise to the occasion, and it is specifically those people that they're looking for, the people that are willing to put themselves in the unfamiliar and to really just suffer uh, for for that end goal, for that heightened state of achievement that they desire. Um, yeah, I firmly believe that you're going to be able to do more than you ever thought possible.
Yeah, I some of those things you do there, and it sucks, right? I didn't get to do all the crazy shit afterwards that everybody comes on here and talks about. So all my reference is pretty much the course or selection or a couple of things here and there. But fucking hell, some of those things were fucking difficult,
Yeah. Hmm.
you know. And Major Decker, he said it best. He said, he's out there, your mind will give up long before your body will. Like, it's
Absolutely.
not even close. That's how people are able to run ultra marathons and shit. Your body
Yeah.
can do it. It's
I
just
did one last year. Yeah. It's horrible.
I I choose not to do them because I don't fucking want to.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. I do my stuff, which is difficult for people that do that shit, and they can do that shit. And whatever makes you fucking happy with
Yeah,
your fitness,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
No judge there. But um, yeah, some of that shit is so fucking hard, and you figure out who you are when you're doing some of it because it hurts so fucking bad, and you want it
Right.
to stop. But then you do one of these, and you look over, you go, that motherfucker got to be in as much pain as I am.
Yeah.
Uh, so I can't quit until that guy quits, and that guy's never gonna quit, right?
Right.
Because it's his second time through selection, and he's from Ranger Battalion or some shit, and that motherfucker ain't quitting. So I ain't quitting either. Yeah, like you said, there was never a point in the course where I was gonna quit. Uh, there was some oopsies where I might have gotten dropped, where the team bailed me out and
Yeah.
things like that. But quitting was never an option. I was never going to the 82nd. I wasn't going back to the regular army. I wasn't going to let myself fail. And I've said this before. The guys that are going to pass, no matter what, no matter what, no matter the physical's one thing, but they can just make themselves do it to accomplish that goal, and then they get to group and they do the same shit. They just accomplish it again. I mean, I had one friend in the course who would get blind drunk every single day, and he graduated top of the class. And then we get to group, same thing. And he went to dive school, did the same thing at dive school, hammered every night, honor graduate, and I there's something about it, right? Just fucking bad motherfuckers that'll accomplish anything, and no matter how much shit they put themselves through, and that can only last so long, right? But
Yeah.
you're around these people all the time. But yeah, that's kind of a self-destructive nature, though, right?
Yeah. Wait, and there's definitely a point where it becomes pathological, where some of the, and it's archetypal in some senses that some people, when they're aiming for that hardest thing, it's not, well, what's the hardest, what's the most meaning? It's what can I suffer through the most because I need to prove myself, whether
Well, you
that's to
saying they're making it
themselves or
harder on themselves
yeah.
to make it even that much more difficult? They're
Oh yeah.
sabotaging themselves and getting
I,
through it.
I mean, it's archetypal to many of the soft personalities. These people, they grew up in whether it's a broken home or they thought that they underachieved in some way. There's many cases of that in the special operations community. And these people, they just seek out whatever is the single most difficult thing they can do. And if it's not scratching their itch, they'll people do crazy things to try to fulfill themselves. And a lot of times they're trying to get that or part they're trying to fulfill it for someone else's approval, for what their idea of someone else's approval is. I'm not saying this is common or even prevailing, but there are definitely people that, within the community that are just, they're making their lives so much more difficult than it needs to be. And then it's seen as a badge of honor, a badge of courage almost. I know and this is not even contained just within the soft community, but how popular is it in the military for people? I only got 2 hours of sleep last night. You only got 2 hours, dude. I was only half hour. I didn't sleep at all. As if it's some badge of honor. It's like this is you're destroying yourself. And if you're doing it consistent, like this guy you talk about, and I've known some cases as well. There is absolutely nothing honorable in charging towards your grave in an effort to tell people how hard you are, how tough you are. I think it's a mistake, but
I think this guy wasn't that, because
okay,
we would inquire. I think he
yeah,
was, as I said earlier, he was just making it that much harder on himself just for himself, because it wasn't like a
yeah.
thing
Well,
of,
even that, even if it's for yourself, why?
yeah, well, there's probably a lot of other underlying
Yeah,
things
but
going on there.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
that people don't take care of, and things like that.
Yeah,
So, but yet, like
yeah,
I said, everybody that comes on here has something that got to them, and they put it off and they let it bury them, right?
yeah,
And they had to dig out
exactly.
of that hole. And
Yep.
there's, every guy at group, is going to have had that happen to him or will have it happen to him. I'm not saying, okay, not everybody, but I would say a good portion of everybody that's in group now is going to put themselves into that situation, whether it's an op tempo, stress, family life stress, mental health, TBIs. I'm a big one on TBI. I think everybody on a team's got some traumatic brain injury that they ignored or thought it was something else. And it's starting to deteriorate their mental state. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's again with, as I alluded to, a lot of the resources being made available to us now. A lot of those um, research entities are doing a lot of really great work in identifying where, even if it's not major traumatic events, that these micro traumatic events do affect people, all the way down to firing machine guns and firing your service rifle. These little micro impacts absolutely do add up. And so it is incumbent upon, and this is not just, again, relegated to just the special operations community, but in the military at large, people need to take care of themselves. And people need to be selfish with that, because there will come a time, I don't care how illustrious of a career you've had, I don't care if you're the number one dude at the number one unit in the face of the planet, you're going to leave eventually. And what's going to be left is the people in your immediate family that you've surrounded yourself with, hopefully. And they are also going to be subject to what you have become in the process of all this. And so are you. So it is incumbent upon the individual in every, or in really every career, but military especially, and then even more pointedly in special operations, because we do subject ourselves to so much hardship, physical, mental, emotional, that you have to take care of yourself. And that, again, being selfish at times is not a bad thing. And that selfishness can actually contribute to your mission, can make you a better operator, can make you a better father, husband, all these things. And that if you're not doing it, I genuinely believe if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not a good member of a team. You're not contributing as highly as you possibly could be.
You mentioned operator syndrome
Yeah.
earlier, and there's a hypothesis we're developing on this show that I like to call operator attitude, which
Hmm. Okay.
originates from the bro side of the brain,
Hmm.
and it puts a negative spin on self-care, right?
Yeah.
That speech is quote unquote, not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's gay, man. We don't need to talk about that. Get that shit out of here. You know, uh, taking a knee frowned upon. The stigma that mental health is not a real thing. PTSD is not a real thing. Dealing
Yeah.
with your problems. It's mission, showing up all the time, always saying yes, and everything else is a much lower priority down the road. What do you think about that? We're developing it as we go here at lesser known operators, but that attitude of toughing it out, basically.
Well, I think it's becoming abundantly clear, again, in non-military spheres, that the approach to therapeutic intervention for men cannot and should not be the same as it is for women. We have our differences, thank goodness, because it's what makes us beautiful and unique. But that becomes tenfold apparent when you have hypermasculine professions like special operations. Well, a lot of the stigma. I know it used to be this way. My impression is that it is not anymore. Um, but again, I guess I've never utilized the services, so I don't know. But that there's a fear of reprisal or a barring to certain operational billets or capabilities or skills or utilizations, whatever, by utilizing these rehabilitative and therapeutic resources. But I do believe that when we treat the mental health, specifically interventions, and specifically therapeutic interventions, in the same way that we treat civilian therapeutic interventions, and especially with a more feminine approach to it, I do believe that we are doing a disservice to the guys, because they are going to be less willing to undergo them. But it is quite evident that these therapeutic interventions are needed and that they do help people. My committee chief, my Charlie instructor, one of the best instructors I've ever had for anything ever, including civilian education. I just met up with him quite extensively over a number of weeks this last summer, and he was also PSYOP before. He was a truck driver to PSYOP, then to SF, and he went through some of the most intense combat out of any of my cadres that I've heard of. And this guy was the nicest freaking guy in the world. Again, the most enthusiastic instructor, the most personable. You would have never known that he was really struggling with some things. And he didn't even know until he was on his way to kind of a sergeant major billet, kind of sudden trying to get out, and he had some civilian things go on that hit him all at once. How badly he was struggling, and they approached his therapeutic interventions with a little bit more sensible, in a little bit more sensible manner, and we're able to get him some unbelievable help. So he's become a really big advocate, especially at 10th Group, for a lot of the guys seeking those interventions. But uh, bringing that all the way back, I do believe that stigma exists mostly because the types of ways that we're trying to help the guys is a way that is just disconnected from them entirely. And I think it's incumbent upon each individual as a teammate to discourage self-destructive behaviors, to encourage openness, to encourage dialogue, especially groups of men where we feel like other people can't relate to what we're trying to say, what the problems we have, the issues we face, that there has to be that, for lack of a better term, tribe mentality, that no one is going to know you better than the guys that you go through these hardships with. So it's incumbent upon the teammate to be present and encouraging, but it's also incumbent upon the individual to, again, I'm using the therapy language, but to be vulnerable, because it is terrifying when you have this group of men that expects the most out of you, that expects you to. I'd heard it put one. Gosh, what was it? That they would rather see you fall off your horse dead than see you dismount it. Um, you have to be willing to risk that if you have any hope at all of saving yourself. Again, which makes you a good operator, um, but also forging connections that go deeper than you think they could, um, because your people are going to understand you better than you give them credit for. And if they're the kind of people that are going to denigrate you for opening up, for seeking the help, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, then those guys probably weren't really your friends to begin with. Those guys probably weren't really worth their salt as operators in the first place, because we are supposed to be taking care of each other. They say SF is a mistress, and a lot of guys put this before even their families. And I may not agree with that, but I get it. I understand why. And if you can't even be vulnerable to those people, who can you be vulnerable to? Because those are the guys that are going to shield you and literally and metaphorically drag you through the fires.
Yeah. They're the ones that are going to be there for you. Interesting relationship, the team, right?
Yeah.
What, and I assume you haven't been on very many teams. One, now
Yep.
you're
Just one.
son.
Well, I'm
So you've
on
got
my
the,
second one now.
but without saying too much,
Yeah.
what's the attitude like in the team room and with teams that you've interacted with?
Um, as you know, it's completely team dependent. Um, some of it's leadership driven, some of it's bottom up, some of it is wily chaos. It's different for every team. But even though I've only been on my second team very recently, I have been through a couple of sets of leadership teams, and I will say that really did influence the dynamic. But at the end of the day, the pit, as you call them, the guys, um, the non-commissioned officers doing the work, your Echo, your Bravo, Charlie, your Delta, um, those guys you trust with everything and anything. Your 3M friends, there's South America phone call friends, as you know, has been so popularized now. So if you're in a prison in South America, who are you going to call? Well, hopefully it's those guys. Because if not, then there's a major dynamic issue, and sometimes those do exist. No one's perfect, no team is perfect. People rub each other the wrong way. That's just the nature of personalities, and especially very strong personalities, which most of us have, and especially hyper masculine, very strong personalities, type A. So you're bound to clash, but you're also in that clash you become closer. I'm convinced.
Yeah, tough to describe in the civilian sector, right? Because rarely will you run into a 12-man ODA in the private sector that is capable of the things that an SF team is, right?
Yeah.
You won't even run into 12 people throughout the course of a year that
Yeah.
would make up the personalities on a team. And you've got them all locked in one room with a keypad on it.
Yeah.
And you're right. A lot of the attitude of the team is determined by the team sergeant. And you saw the meme that the reel that I posted. Uh, that's real life, and that can fuck up a team pretty quickly if the team
Yeah.
sergeant doesn't have his shit together. Or inversely, if he does have it together, but he's got 3 or 4 guys on the team that don't, firing one guy, you getting rid of one guy is one thing, but then you've
Yeah.
got 4 or 5 guys that are really going through it together. That's tough to overcome as a team sergeant. So you got your dynamics and different personalities. Guys have been seeing different levels of combat and different personalities coming from all over, and it's a lot of things changing, a lot of different eras also, right? Because we're coming out of the global war on terror, but the generations are getting smaller with the advances in, let's say, technology and the pace of life just in regular civilian world. But we're not in the same country that we were in 2020 or 2001. The world was a completely different place. Kids were raised differently, and you've got all these other things. It's crazy. And for people listening, it's very hard to describe what that life is like. And then I've said it many times, it's addictive, right? Having the teammates around you that you can accomplish anything and they'll be there for you. But that does mean, on the softer thing of taking care of each other and being a good example while you're in uniform still to each other. And it's a lot of responsibility. And your friends, you'll follow each other up or down.
Yeah.
And hopefully would trend towards the upward direction. But it just seems like, but, there's probably both good and bad. But we hear about the bad so much
Of
because,
course.
as I said, when I spoke to TJ Webb, a cop, he sees the same stuff we do. A lot of the times, the first time you hear about your buddy's mental health issues is when he kills himself.
Yeah.
That's so fucked up, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it can be mitigated by it's easy. It's really, I genuinely believe it's easier to be a good teammate than it is to be a good friend. Um, just being involved with your buddies outside of work, knowing their families, knowing what's going on, asking about what's going on. How are you feeling about these things? It's I've known a lot of people who I would trust on a team with my life, but they weren't a great friend. And I've had the inverse as well, where they were a great friend. I wouldn't necessarily trust them on a team. But if you can manage to burden yourself with both, which does take an element of selflessness, then you're the guy I want. You're the exact person I want on my team.
Yeah. Well, that quote, when I went through selection, Sergeant Major Reese was there, right? And he said the same thing. You're going to encounter people on your team that you don't like at all. He said, I had people on my team, I wouldn't piss on their face if their teeth were on fire. But if we were in a gunfight, I'd want them right next to me. Now you don't like somebody's personality at all to that extent where you wouldn't piss on their face if their teeth were on fire. Great saying, by the way. But if they're there as a teammate, and it's what you said, much better teammate than they are a friend. Um, and that can lead to, destructive relationships in group as well. I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of complexities to the team life, and it's always fucking changing, right? That's what's interesting
If
to
you,
talk to you because you're doing it. You're doing it right now. You're still
yeah,
in it.
yeah. Any domain that you're dealing with humans as your your matter of main course, it's going to be so fluid, so dynamic, and in many ways unpredictable. That's honestly my favorite part about this entire job. If you took away all the shooting, all the fitness stuff, all the sexy stuff everyone loves to do, and you just left the personalities, you give me any job in the world and I would be happy. I'd be satisfied because it's the people that again, these people are not valuable because of what they do. These people are able to do what they do because they are so damn valuable. And it's my favorite thing I've ever encountered in my entire life.
Yeah, it's something else. It's something you cannot describe to anyone,
Yeah.
um, unless you go through and you get to a team or in any special operations. I'm sure it's anything in any special operations unit. The higher you go
Yeah.
up, the finer the talent of person, not only tactical, but their personality and the way they carry themselves and their professionalism. Right. I can
And
only assume that if you go to tier one units or special missions units, that it gets even more so.
I was just gonna say, even I have that, kind of perception in the back of my mind, but I want to ensure that we don't relegate it to that because there are unbelievably capable and high performing people in all areas of the military and all areas outside of the military. And that if you want to be a high functioning member of a high functioning team, those avenues are available to you in whatever sphere you want, whether that's special operations, whether that's conventional military, or whether that's something civilian side. The high performing team judged on a basis of personality, cohesiveness, and workability, it's going to, I genuinely believe it's going to be pretty common across the playing field. What's going to be asked of you is obviously going to be vastly different, but, I'm sure that the people dynamic isn't much different on a rugby team, a high performing rugby team, or a high performing sales team. Again, their tasks are going to be differently asked, but
Those teams don't. It's not life or death.
and that's true. That's what I'm saying. Like the tasks are asked, but the high functioning personalities and dealing with the human element, it's going to be the same for any sphere where people are your business.
No. Yeah. Well, as long as nobody's shooting at you, right?
Yep.
So, what was it like getting handed your beret? Because you said, I want to, you told your dad, I want to be those guys, the cool guys over there. What was
Yeah.
it like when you finally walked across the stage and got handed that beret?
Uh, I guess it didn't hit me like being handed the beret. The poor word uses whatever. But it's oh hey, I finally got it. But it was the moment not long after when we started marching away from the because we had our graduation at Hangar on Pope Airfield. Um, when we were kind of making our exit, and I got to make eye contact with my dad. That was the moment where it was. Uh, you could almost see the catharsis in his eyes, where it's just kind of that sigh, like I did it. I don't have to worry about him anymore. Um, and that is the proudest moment of my life so far, for certain, because it was something that at once seemed and absolutely was unattainable. But then along the way, I was able to fashion myself into the person who was able to attain it. And so all it did, you said earlier, that you find out who you are, you learn who you are. I don't, I think that's some cases, but I think for most of the people, they already thought they were that guy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Hopefully, it's just proving to yourself and to others that you are who you said you were going to be. And so for me, it was that moment where I was like, okay, now I have proof. All this time where I told people I was going to do things, where I said I was going to be uh, somebody, I have proof of it. I have a tangible piece of evidence that I am that guy. So that was the feeling for me.
Yeah. Now I can hold it in my hand.
Yeah,
I think getting my letter at selection was it because once I got that, I knew I was going to graduate.
yeah,
That was I walked out of there, I had my thing. Because I fucking crushed selection, and the course crushed that too. But once I got that, and then I got the beret, I was kind of like, all right, this is cool. But it's always come. I think back about the two. It was getting handed that sheet. You candidate, you're selected. I was like,
yeah.
fuck
And
yeah.
I guess I had a little bit different experience. There were times in the course where I didn't think I was going to make it. Um, there was
It was only
a
7 minutes for me, man. 7 minutes in the
yeah,
Charlie course where I was questioning every decision in my life up to that point. That was it.
yeah. My hubris was my downfall. I didn't study in the Charlie course, and I've never been a studying kind of guy. I've always been able to remember things very easily. I'm very fortunate in that, but my pride told me I didn't have to study for the hands-on exam in calc and place. And I went to do the electronic initiating system, and I was supposed to do left switch, right switch. I did right switch, left switch. He told me, stand up, you're done, come back in 3 months. And, so I thought, I was like, what the heck? So that second time going up, I thought, this is kind of do or die. Might not make this. Um, Luckily corrected my mistakes. I was able to pull it off, but, it is possible where you can be fully capable and still come up short. Yeah, and usually it's a matter of pride.
Yeah. Everybody gets one of those in the course, right? It's some moment where like, oh, I gotta do this. But
Yeah,
it was at the beginning for me when I hurt my knee. Like
yeah,
that was a week in, 2 weeks into selection the first time. So I was already. So I said, this everything past getting back to my unit, and they're going, oh, you didn't make it. I'm like, fuck you. Everything
yeah,
past that moment was, there's no way I'm going to fail
yeah,
from here on out. So that's why in the course, I left no doubt every time I showed up to a class or anything like that, because I had that moment way back there when when you're not even in the anything yet. There's nothing. There's no dream yet. So just yeah, everything happens at different points, but I don't know if I did. I don't even remember the electronic initiating system. I remember the time fuse. I remember all 7 minutes that it fucking burned, and mine
It-
popped, and then the kid next to me who was supposed to cut 7:30 cut 7 by accident, and his popped, and I went yes, and he goes fuck.
yeah. For us, the time system was the retest. It was the alternate. So I with mine it was considered a major safety violation So I wasn't even given a retest. I just had to recycle and come back and try it again.
How'd you take that?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Am I going to sit and mope about it? Am I going to sit and think about all the different things I could have done? Or am I going to just acknowledge those things and then do them? I've had, I guess, since that kind of paradigm shift in my mindset where I was super unhealthy and unachieving back in the reserves to now, it's whenever I fail something, I can't stand it. I can't stand it so much that I do everything I possibly can to be right. Yeah, if I've come up short in a physical test, well, that day I'm back at the gym or I'm on the track. If I came up short in a knowledge test, well, I'm in the books that night, or whatever. It's like I see no reason to stop and contemplate the circumstances of failure because you know in your heart why you failed. 90% of the time when you come up short, it was no one else's fault. You know exactly where you didn't do what you needed to do, or you did something you shouldn't have, and that's what caused it. So it's and you know that without trying to lie to yourself, without trying to spin some story of why it is it's not quite my fault. These circumstances, this and well, it is your fault. If you really want to take ownership of it, it is your fault, and it's gonna. If you want to succeed, it's got to be your fault as well, because no one's gonna do it for you. So I didn't sit and dwell on it. It's just back to work, back in action.
Yeah. Everything good or bad in your life is all your fault.
Yeah.
Granted, there's meteorites that fall out of the sky, but it's the odds of all of some of those things that are uncontrollable, very, very
Right.
tiny. So, for the most part, and I say great majority, everything that is good or bad in your life is completely your fault.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that, hit me up in the comment section and send me some hate mail. Always looking for some hate mail. But um, yeah, that's wait. Everybody takes things differently. Yeah, you can fucking crawl inside a bottle and ruin the rest of your career. You can pick yourself up and figure it out afterwards, right? But
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's action. I've so in the civilian side, I was in the reserves. I had a number of jobs. I was once I started losing weight, I became a kickboxing fitness instructor, and it's the only job I've ever been fired from. Um, under, in my opinion, what were less than savory circumstances, and I was fired with one of my best friends at the time, and no discredit to him at all. Now he's a very, very hardworking, family-oriented man. He's an incredible person. But at that time, we were very young, and we lacked maturity. But we got fired. We walked out. It was about 8 in the morning. I said, "All right, dude, I'm gonna go write my resume. I'm gonna print it, and I'll come pick you back up at 1, so you can go apply for jobs." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I just got fired." I said, "Oh, you're not gonna come with to apply and stuff?" He's like, "No, dude, I'm gonna go home." Said, okay, and I had a job that afternoon, and he didn't have one for a little while. Again, no discredit to him. He was a young man at the time, and he's since become an upstanding person. But it's that I guess that kind of mindset has been in me for as long as I've been, uh, as long as I've had a direction now. So I can't even see it another way.
there is value in procrastination, though. I procrastinate, and then I say the stupid line to myself. If I wait till the last minute, it only takes a minute. Uh, I've seen success that way. I've also fucked myself over too much though. So you're probably on the right track with
Hmm.
being proactive when
Yeah.
things go awry there.
Well,
But
I can only say that because I've also messed it up by progressing.
by procrastinating,
Yeah.
I do that. I find that with writing too, speeches. I sit down to write something way ahead of time. I'm like, this sounds dumb. And then thing alarm will go off. Hey, you're a week out. You know what? That I got a really good idea, and then I just hammer it out. It just flows out. But if I try and take my time and plan ahead, it's not there. It all sounds shitty, you know. but they get in the right mindset and get after it. And maybe that's why I was successful in the course. It came showtime, it's time to perform. And then once we were off, I was telling dick jokes and getting hammered and hanging out with my friends and whatever. But I did want to ask you
Yeah.
one question, totally unrelated to what we're talking about. How many books or novels do you have you read on philosophy, and how long have, because you're very well read by the way you speak and your vocabulary, what kind of
Thank you.
books and stuff do you get into?
So I have this really unfortunate habit of overbuying, overcommitting to like what I believe I'll be able to read. Then I'll read a third, two-thirds of a book and say, okay, got it, and set it back down. So there's a lot of stuff that I've only read partially. I have actually, admittedly, not delved too deeply into again the full spectrum reading of a lot of philosophy books. But I try to make myself baseline familiar with a number of different philosophy sets and worldviews. Um, but yeah, I guess I've likely read more than people. I don't know why, but people hate reading these days. So I do enjoy it. I tend to read a lot of history. Um, uh, Not too much.
Meditations, right?
Yeah, yeah. I will say that one was absolutely formative.
That
I
seems like
picked.
the way you speak is kind of paralleled with a lot of things in there.
I guess imitation is a hopefully a sincere form of flattery. For I mean, it was just it, it shook me to my core that this person 2,000 plus years ago could be going through the same trials and tribulations that I was, and could have such positive conclusions, or not even positive, but hopeful conclusions. And I used to um, very closely adhere to Stoic philosophy. I no longer do. I think Stoicism is the single best way to interface with the self, but I don't believe it is necessarily the best or most preferable way to interface with the world, with society, with other individuals, and that a lot of that is contextual. Um, I have not read as much as I would like to. There's so much that's on my list and on my bookshelf that again just goes unread week after week, and I get shiny object syndrome and buy a new book and read half of it, and then buy a new book and read half of that. And trying to get better at that. And I have been in recent months, but I'm still nowhere near as learned and spun up on things as I would like to be.
Well, it's, well, what's the word? Audible in your the way you speak. So,
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
other question about literature.
Yeah.
You said you had written, I think this was in our
Yeah.
previous
Hmm.
initial attempt to record. Is that a pen name or is that your actual name?
So I have written 6 books under my actual name, um, at, of which I'm not at liberty to release just yet. Um, I'm working on another one right now. I have published them. I again try to keep it delineated from the page. Um, the one I'm working on now eventually will be connected to the page. At what point I don't know because I don't know when I'm going to be willing to publish it. Um, but I have pulled actually most of my books off the shelves because I wrote them when I was younger, and I my
You didn't write them when you were older? No shit, you wrote them when you were
yeah,
younger. Yeah,
right.
obviously.
And so I uh I just no longer agree with everything that I wrote in them. So I wanted to revise and update my ideas. And this next one will be essentially a 365-day reader, uh, compilation of some of the older stuff that I've written and again I've pulled, I've since revised, uh, combined with a lot of the stuff that I put out on the page that people seem to gravitate towards. So, whether it's a year to 4 years from now remains to be seen. But I do plan to write forever. I get a lot of fulfillment from writing the books and writing the stuff that I do on the page. So yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, to walk that line, right? Like published
yeah,
author, but you can't, you got this persona you'd love to write, but now we got to, okay, let me bring the two together. So now this
Yeah.
this online persona of mine is going to write now as somebody completely separate. So interesting.
Right.
That was kept bouncing in my head, and I didn't have a moment to pull that
Yeah.
back in.
I stay faithful to the same style, same tone, same subject matter. It's really not altogether different. Again, it's just what I am willing to advertise in one sphere of my life versus the other.
Well, it's admirable. Good on you. I mean, you're the, let's see, one, two, three, four. You'll be the fifth. You're the fifth author that we've had on the show. So
Nice. Awesome.
wonderful. Um, we get the beret. Did you? No, can't say that. When you got to group, walk into the team room, you just sergeant major says you're going down to dup, right? Go down there, walking in there. What was that like?
Um, Much more relaxed than I had anticipated. There were some individual personalities where I had to definitely earn their respect. Um, there's one personality where I didn't earn his respect at all, and that, that's just what happened. But then everyone else was extremely welcoming, uh, extremely inclusive, and all I wanted to see was mutual success. So it was a very positive experience for me. I was very fortunate. I've had buddies that haven't been able to talk for the first 6 months. I have buddies that get smoked every day, and I I understand why it happens, but I couldn't see myself ever being that kind of teammate. Um, but in my case, it was a very much a positive experience. Again, very much just being brought into the fold right away, and because I think they understand that my success and my willingness to put out for that success only raise the stock of the team as a whole. And so I'm very thankful and fortunate for that.
Yeah, as you said earlier, the team sergeant dictates a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
If team sergeant's a dickhead or just an asshole or angry, good or bad experience can go either way. And yeah, experiences may vary when you walk through those team room doors, but you better have a case of beer with you when you do. Um, how did your perception of special forces change from selection to now getting to group? Was getting there everything you thought it would be when you started the process out?
Of course not. You're disappointed in so many ways, and then you're also unbelievably mind blown in some others. Again, nothing is in that perfect balance, and nothing is ever what you believe it's going to be. So I'm sure you get the same, but yeah, I get a lot of people asking in the inbox, "What's this like? What's that like? What is is it everything that you think it's going to be?" And it's, hey, dude, I cannot answer any of these for you because I only have my individual unique experience. I don't know what you're expecting. I know what I was expecting. And I know that there were expectations that were exceeded and expectations that were not met. And, that's going to vary team to team, group to group, year to year. Um,
It takes like
so
10 years to get the full spectrum of it, too. Like you just go to group for 3 years and you get out. You didn't get to see anything.
yeah, I think that a lot of the guys that have been there have the team sergeants and by extension wards and some of the more senior officers. They talk about the evolution of even the conflict. I mean, you look at a lot of things that we're still training for, even, and it doesn't even match the threat that we face. And the one thing I do love about the community so much is that uh, it's acknowledged all around. Like, what are we doing this for? This is outdated. This is not what we need to be doing. We need to be focusing on the current and next problem set. And I believe that as slow as it might seem, the fact that it's happening is indicative of the quality of the fighting force. Um, I will say that I thought everyone was going to be, just an extremely high performer, and then you get there and you realize that there's a lot of just regular people, and that's okay because these regular people, as we said, often rise to the occasion. Um, that is asked of them. And I do believe the discrepancy between a good and a great Green Beret versus an average Green Beret is actually much larger than an average Green Beret and say an average conventional side soldier. Again, you get to any kind of specialized unit, any higher echelon unit, whether that's a recon section at an infantry company, or you go to special operations, you're gonna find people who are dirtbags, who should not be there, who detract from what you believe the image of your profession should be. And then there are going to be people who you can scarcely fathom that they exist. All this raw talent, all this capability, and all this savoir faire, for lack of a better term, wrapped into a singular person. It's like, God was playing favorites when he made this guy or gal or whomever. But it's such a privilege to be around those kinds of people because the energy that emanates off of them can only serve to better the organization and the other people around them. It's again, I'll harp on that forever. That it's those kinds of people that I don't care if it's this job or sweeping sewers, they would put a phenomenal mark on anywhere that they come into contact with, and that is the biggest privilege of the job. That those people are in an abnormally high concentration in this profession.
Yeah. Oh fuck yeah. The concentration of shitbag to super soldier is way more favorable than it is in the regular army in group.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then we do have to consider as well that our what has become our baseline, our normal, like the guys that we consider that are that guy's kind of a piece of crap or a low performer, whatever, is still usually much higher than the baseline of it's almost like trying to examine poverty in the United States versus Yemen. It's just not even you're not even the same planet. You're not even comparable. So our standard deviations are much larger than um, than than your subpopulace in the regular military.
yeah, different group of people, and I tell people most Green Berets, like they're not my size. It's not the healthiest operator
Yeah,
size and weight. Like carrying 240 pounds around, it's
yeah,
fun for me now. But in like you don't want to do that. When because you got to carry all this other shit too. You don't want to be lugging all that muscle around. You want to be strong and you want to be fit. But I I only look like this because I fucking love it. And when I put on my Green Beret Foundation uh, polo and I walk up in front of people, I want to leave no fucking doubt that that man is who he says he is, and that's one of the reasons in itself. Is whatever, but because people make up wild shit, their impression of what a Green Beret is isn't true. You
yeah.
just have normal dudes in a hallway that are fucking tough men that can accomplish anything, just killers, right? And but yeah, then there are super soldiers and guys that can keep their heart rate at 200 beats per minute forever, and that's something you can't teach.
Yeah.
And they usually go on to do more illustrious things in more fun units and things like that because they'll get bored of being better than the best in the army, right? And they go, "There's got to be something else," and they can go do it. What are your thoughts on that? Have you started getting those emails yet or no?
Of course. It's I don't want to say it's unique or proprietary, and what the skill set's going to get them. Um, what I find equally and in some ways more interesting is the when guys are going into areas that don't specifically pertain to shoot bang bang combat stuff because it just shows how intellectually capable people need to be. And I don't want to get into the specifics of that. I don't think it would be responsible, but there are so many opportunities beyond what people believe is the baseline of, you know, just shoot combat. We're exposed to the GWAT version of the SF, and there's just so much more. Um, I myself am a big language guy. I speak three fluently and another three conversationally, and opportunities exist for the yappers out there like me. Um, it is again unfathomable the places to which these hyper niche skill sets that you don't consider uh, can take you. My captain of my last team was a pilot. He has private pilot's license. There's again, like you said, guys that are investment bankers. There are people that are Olympians, and each one of those niches can be applied to a different subset of a mission that you would have not even imagined to think up. But because it is unconventional, because these people are thinking outside of the box, they find a way to utilize those really niche and unique skill sets in a creative manner to get, like you said, anything done.
That's a lot of languages, dude. It's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And that's just a normal thing in group, right? Somebody can do something extraordinary, like, oh, he speaks 6 languages. That guy can, hit a target at 2 miles with any firearm.
Yeah.
Uh, just throw away stuff. That's just
Yeah.
just a normal skill in there. And you're right. You'll have all these secondary skills. And while you were saying that, it kind of hit me why I took it so hard, losing like the army, is that was it. Like I was just working construction and then bartend that then the market collapsed in whatever 2009, right? So then I started bartending when I turned 20 or 21, and I joined the army, and everything turned around. Like I was the top of everything through the thing, and the pinnacle was getting to group and the beret. There was no other. I was and wanted to be a professional soldier, and that's why it goes back to like I hearkened on the experience in the regular army, right? I loved everything about it. That was the career that there's no substitute for. And when I lost that, I still haven't gotten over it. I still haven't, there's nothing comparable to. And maybe that's why I pushed myself down here. It's like I can still be around the people and still learn and
Yeah.
get lessons from everybody else and share that with the world. But I don't think there's nothing going to compare. Nothing's come up working with people, talking to civilians and things like that, or even other job. I just want to do what I want to do now after, because when I got out, I said, there's nothing in my life more I want to accomplish. That's it. Like I have no goals. I have nothing else I want to do. I don't retirement or anything like that. I did everything I wanted to do. And that's a really hard thing to swallow when you're 30, some early 30s, right?
Yeah.
Um, and now, went so deep down the hole. I'm a year sober now, and you can tell what comes along with that. But I don't think guys can handle it. A lot of people coming out of the generation now don't know how to handle it when it ends, right? And that's why it's so like refreshing. You're saying guys are more emotionally tied or aware of what's going on with them, right?
Yeah.
Where when I say I was pouring everything into it, everything, I was fucking obsessed with being a Green Beret. That's all I thought about. And then when it was over, I fucking lost my mind. Lost my fucking mind. And yeah, it's just interesting to hear what you have to say. And where do you think you fit into the, if one being the best Green Beret and 10, where in your mind, and I'm not going to hold you to this, where do you think you fit in?
In the middle.
Everybody's going to say that. Everybody would say that. You think?
But and I guess I don't. I, you're probably correct there, but I don't think. So I was introduced to the concept of vertical thinking probably about a decade ago, where you're essentially whatever you are comparing yourself against. It doesn't matter if it's being a warrior or being a hockey player or an accountant or a garbage man. There is a best. Someone is the best ever. So there is someone that did it better than anyone else ever could have. and then there's also the worst ever. And so the rational and reasonable person is going to look at both of those and say, okay, well, I want to shoot for that top one. I know I'm not there yet, but if I'm trying to get there, then at least I'm on the right path. And then they can look below themselves and say, okay, well, that is what I fear most becoming, because that's the most detestable form of this persona that I'm trying to adopt. So that's what I have to avoid, and that can serve as a push on the other side of motivation to drive you lest you fall to those depths. Um, so I guess it's the only way I can think. Probably just about everything is until God willing, that there's something in the world that that any person is awarded for. Like, you're the best. You're it. You're acknowledged. You're publicly and unanimously acknowledged to be the best at this thing. And even usually that is in dispute in some way. Look at people who win sports championships, or say UFC fighters. He's the number one guy in the world right now, and people will say, "Oh, this guy could beat him. Hey, he's good, but this guy's better." So you can even again have that proof, that tangible, um, even bestowed proof that other people get you. Maybe not even that you create yourself, and you can still be doubted, and you can still doubt yourself. So I think it is rational and reasonable to say that, well, yeah, I'm going to be somewhere in the middle at any point, because I could always be better at this. Like, yeah, I might be the language guy. I might be really good. I might be the best guy on my team at that. But I'm not that great of a sniper,
Mm.
and I could always get better at shooting pistols, and could always get better at this, and I could always get better. So again, referring back to that lack of balance, there's always going to be some improvements you can make um, in any sphere, and when you do make those improvements, give your time and energy to those, other things are going to fall by the wayside. So I think it would just be irrational of me to think any other way.
I had to put you on the spot there, but
Yeah,
it only matters what your teammates say about you behind your
yeah,
back.
yeah,
That's really the reputation in group is everything. You can,
yeah,
you know, but you asked me the same question when I was at group, I'd be a fucking total smartass and say, obviously, I'm the best, being sarcastic and whatever. But yeah, any good, it doesn't matter what unit you're in. Anybody good soldier or good person's gonna be like, I'm just right in the middle. You know, they're not gonna toot their own horn. Um, but some guys can, and they back it up. That's their attitude, right? And they're mostly from
yeah.
Boston or something like that. So let's see, no doubt. But how long are you going to take this thing, man? Are you going to retire, or what's is this the to an end? To what end?
Uh, uh, very TBD. Um, once this assignment ends, I've already got my next one elected. Um, my I've always told myself that once I start a family, that I would like to get out of the game, because that's my number one goal in my life, is be a good father, good husband, and the level of presence I would like to have as a father and husband is not afforded in this profession. Um, so, I just hit 30 last year, so that's starting to become more and more of a desire, more and more of a possibility. Uh, but even if I do leave active duty, I will likely stay connected in some way, whether that's National Guard, um, or just being actively involved with the community in some way. Um, I don't believe I'll retire out of active duty, but stranger things have happened, and I don't want to discount it altogether. But I am beginning to focus more on like my education, propping myself up for things after, in the event that those familial goals that I so greatly desire are met in the nearer term.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know where group life and group's going to go. We're one tweet away from World War III at any given time.
Yeah, yeah,
So, what's the thought on that right now? Because we're going to be sent if shit goes sideways or whatever to go do terrible things to terrible people for whatever reason. What's the thought on what's going on in the news right now?
Well, it's obviously a situation that is. Uh, I'm fortunate enough to have the mindset kind kind of inculcated by having experience with PSYOP that I'm very skeptical of every bit of information that's put out there. Uh, and the term I heard used to describe how flooded we are with information, they call it hyper reality, is a great term. There's so much information, true, false, partially true, partially false, that you don't know what to make of. You don't know which is the truth. How do you discern that? And so I have my methodology of trying to find commonalities between sources, especially those with opposing views. It's trying to find, keep my finger on the pulse of what's actually happening in the world. And while you're in, you have the fortunate circumstance of having a small peek behind the curtain in some areas, so that can help. But really, to try to make any sense of it all when it's all just so unsensible. I don't want to say that it's moot, but whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And the hope is that the leaders above us have some calculus that we're not considering, or doing their part in the best interest of the country. And what I do know is that whatever happens, there are men standing by ready to do what is necessary on behalf of the United States of America. One of my I fall in love with some of the memes I make sometimes, and one of the ones I made on 9/11 a couple of years back was just that a tragedy happens, and then there's a group of Green Berets saying, "Just we are ready," and that is what I put my faith in. That's what I have observed through America's historical record, is that anytime there has been a national tragedy, internal and external, there are people standing by ready to do work. Again, whether it's law enforcement or fire or EMS or fabrication production or special operations personnel, everyone in between. We have hardworking Americans that are ready to fight for our way of life, for our sovereignty if need be, and for the sovereignty of others if need be. And so I try not to ruminate on it too much, as to what extent that is possible. Even though you think about it all the time. What if today's the day? What if What if it does happen? And what happens to me? What happens to us? What happens to all of this? So as much as I can, I just have to put faith in myself, my teammates, and that whatever does happen is that which is supposed to happen.
You've referred back to your meme, right? And I saw one in there that is me almost every day, and it was the two couple in bed. I wonder what he's thinking about, and it's
Hmm.
Shugart and Gordon
Yeah.
right there, right? And that's really what it is. Uh, I think about them every day, and I never knew them or anything. I think I have
Yeah.
a couple friends that knew them, but I think about that base dedication to the job of what we are and what people before us did. Of you know, man, if the call came down, all of us would do that. And that's who I like to think that I served with, and you serve with, and we all are, right? And I tried to explain it to my wife, and I was like, I don't actually think I can explain it to you what I'm trying to say, because you won't get it. Is they got off the plane knowing that they were going to get killed, right? That wasn't their intention, but that was had to be foremost in their mind, and that's what I like to think regiment is: fucking dedication to each other, no matter what.
Yeah. I think it's the military experience writ large, though. I don't. I though I obviously believe it happens in great concentration special operations. Look at World War II, look at Vietnam. You had heroic acts everywhere, and non-special operations units. And I do think I was just speaking to a friend about it yesterday. I call it the hero in waiting. That you never know if you're going to be thrust into the circumstances of having to commit a heroic action. And if you have any sense about you at all, you don't want that day to come. You don't necessarily, because that's usually it's going to be the worst day of your life, right? But if it is to come, you pray that you're the type of person that will step up, that has already made that decision ahead of time, that it doesn't matter the circumstances. I will be the guy. I will be the one who, charges headfirst into the unfavorable or unwinnable circumstance because I know it's the right thing to do. And which is again why I don't believe in the, falling to your lowest level of training, because there's no way you could train somebody for that mindset. There's no way you could train somebody for that level of dedication to another human being. The only thing you can do is try to put yourself through difficult situations. And this contradicts what I said earlier about it becoming pathological. But there's balance everywhere. But if you, Andrew Huberman said it really well, I think last year, is that if you can continually test yourself in some hard things, that when you meet the really hard thing that you don't have an option in, at least you have the neural software to tell yourself, hey, I can do hard things because I've already proven that to myself. So this hard thing is just another one of those. And like you said, you want to think that everyone that we work with is capable of that. And I believe in many senses that is true. But you can't know until you experience it. And if we're being honest, hell no, I don't want to experience it. I don't want us to have World War III. I don't want us to be embroiled in conflict with China or North Korea or Russia or any of that. Why would I wish that upon anyone in the world? Just so I can get my kicks and adrenaline. I don't think that that's necessarily the right way of viewing it. But I will always look at it as that if it is to happen in my time, then I have to be the person that is capable of shouldering that burden with equanimity and the ability to rise above the circumstances because there are people counting on me to do so.
Yeah. War is terrible. I have no experience with it, but I talk to people that have been there, and it fucking blows, right? Uh, and I hope, yeah, president said it best, right? I just want people to stop dying. Yeah, we should all strive towards that. Um, and but unfortunately, that's not the way things work. There's a lot of fucking bad people doing bad shit all over the world, and like way more. Like once you have a sense of what's going on, there is so much bad shit happening all over the place that's not in the United States. Most Americans have no fucking idea all of the bad shit that's going on. And you spoke to the purview of the news, right? None of that shit's true. None of that shit is true. Any that we're getting fed in the media, there are. It's all twisted to some sort of agenda. And somebody put it the other day, another podcaster, this is becoming the only way that you're able to get the information from the source is a long form interview of people that are actually doing the thing. Because when everything gets, you're distilling something from an interview to an article to what's actually put out, then you're getting a distorted someone's opinion view of whoever owns that article. Is that kind of what your background in psychological operations leads you to believe now?
Not quite. Though I do think that obviously getting information from directly from the source is the most valuable. One of the biggest challenges is finding those sources. I follow a lot of open source intel pages on social media. I think those guys are awesome. Usually, they're because everyone has an agenda. To say that someone's unbiased on an agenda list is asinine because we all have them. Usually, they're a little more committed to putting out facts. And a lot of them, especially people who were former intelligence analysts, will give you their opinion They'll report a fact or an event, and then they'll say, "This is the opinion about it. This is my analysis." So I do like those, but also I 100% do use mainstream news sources. And what I find is I'll get competing narratives, both nationally and internationally, sorry, domestically and internationally. And whatever is common amongst them is usually fairly reliable as some sort of truth. For example, you get a left-leaning publication in the U.S. that says, you know, school shooting takes out, you know, 10 people. And then you get a right-leaning publication that says shooting near school with multiple victims. Well, what's common amongst those? You know, that there was a shooting, there were people hurt, and that there was a school nearby. And it's just a very arbitrary example, but whatever you can extrapolate that's common, even through the bias and through the slant, usually has some semblance of truth. And then you can start to build your view on the matter from that. I read a ton of Russian news, um, which is going to have a very different verbiage than American news on all matter of issues. Um, and once you start being able to pick up on those variations in verbiage, you can also then get tone and nuance, and you can understand the whys of things. And if you can understand why certain things are being reported in a certain way, it puts you in a better position to analyze the veracity of it. So it takes a long time, but essentially all you're doing is building a gut. What's your gut feeling on this? What does it smell like? If for lack of a better term, if it smells like crap, it's probably crap. And so it's incumbent. The individual has to do it though. No one can really teach that gut feeling. And but once you get it trained, you can start making predictions, then analyze actions and events based off your predictions, and where was it correct, where was it incorrect, what were my blind spots, and you actually start to get pretty dang decent at being able to see where things are steering.
Is that practiced or?
Oh yeah, it has to be. If it's just like any skill, it can atrophy super easily, especially because we are by nature very biased. Now, I have my socio-political slants, and of course, I want to see my desired outcomes in everything I read. I want to see things that confirm what I want to believe and what I want to see. And so I have to be cognizant of that. And I genuinely believe that that's one of the bigger problems facing the world now is that, again, in this hyper reality, there, for every issue you can imagine, there is information supporting your worldview. And so, of course, you're going to gravitate towards that. And it's uncomfortable to read stuff that contradicts it, as to the contrary. And it's not to say that everything that's to the contrary is going to be right or everything that's supportive is going to be wrong. But if you are not at least exercising, again, just with anything, you exercise and it's uncomfortable. If you're not exercising that uncomfortable disposition with opposing views, you're probably not challenging yourself enough in your analysis of things.
For everything you said, I think most people, though, don't have the cognitive capacity to do all of that, and they'll just take it as the first thing they see.
I think they have the cognitive capacity, but what they don't have yet is the, either the knowledge that they're doing it or the willingness, because it is so much easier to just accept things at face value. It is more comfortable. Why would you want to put effort in? Why would you want to get uncomfortable? Same as the reason people don't go to the gym. They see people like us working ourselves to the bone in the gym, and they think, ugh, why would I want to do that? That's a lot of work. It's uncomfortable. You're sweating and you're hurting and you're aching, and you could tear something. God, heaven forbid, something in you breaks. In this case, maybe it's your worldview that breaks, and something, a bias or a value held, you are at risk of breaking those every time you make an intellectual dive into the opposition. But in order to truly progress and get anywhere, you have to be willing to break those. So it's a lot of it is just seeking of comfort. People, they don't know or are unwilling to risk their what they perceive as their pocket of mental safety.
Yeah. Said sometimes once you know, you don't want to know anymore.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
because, but like, as for working out, yeah, if people think working out is dangerous, what did that guy say? What was that quote? If you think working out's dangerous, try being weak.
Yeah, and it's the same thing intellectually, in my opinion. Um, they say dumb doesn't know it's dumb, and that unfortunately seems to um, be the very observable case. But dumb is curable. You look at how educated. Again, our baseline is so different these days. But you look at how educated the world is these days versus 200 years ago. You think peasant farmers knew about algebra, or at least you know your average American can tell you a squared plus b squared equals c
Well,
squared.
they did know that the earth was round, but now it's flat.
Yeah, so it's all ignorance is curable. It just depends on the dose and if the person's willing to take it.
How does your mind deal with it? Because from just talking to you and your ability to jump from thought to thought and things like that, you're obviously very intelligent, but that's a common thing at group, right? When is it enough? Is it just constant for that next meaning? Is it a search for meaning or a search for or striving to be the best, or because that's another common thing in group, right? You just always, it's never enough. You're trying to get to that next step or that
Yeah,
next job or that next accomplishment. Where are you on that type of thinking in your
I
career right now?
I absolutely suffer from it, and that's one of the things that one of the competing narratives in the polylogue of the mind is part of me sees so clearly what I can, would, and want to do on the outside, and then part of me sees all these continual summits in different areas within the military and say military adjacent organizations. And you see people reaching these summits, and then there's the next one, and then there's this other unit, and then there's these other guys, and then there's this small task force made of this unit, and there's this program made from the guys that were in that task force, and it's the next thing. And what you see is a lot of false summits, and I see that as like a positive and a negative. It's a positive because it always gives you a purpose, always leaves you chasing the next thing. But it can become, as with anything, pathological to a point where you are detracting from your ability to experience the present moment. In some cases, I don't think I've gone there yet. But then there are, in anything you do, you're sacrificing potential futures. Every single decision you make is sacrificing another, infinite number of choices you could have made. So if you follow a certain path, then other paths become closed to you. Just uh, the temporal circumstance of that, especially in this profession where we have a wear out date, we have an expiration date. Your joints and ligaments are going to do this forever. Your mind is going to do this forever. Um, there's only so much you can do, and for those people who are hungry for the world, that's a really tough pill to swallow. One I have not been able to choke down myself yet. Um, but I again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because I believe that once you think you've accomplished it all, as we talk about that vertical thinking, you believe you're at the top, and none of us are. So you should be hungry. You should be searching for the next thing, but also with the gratitude of where you're at, with the understanding that uh, there will come a day where there will be no next thing for you.
Yeah. Um, Jordan Peterson, don't compare yourself to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah,
And that's very difficult to do. Very difficult to do, especially in the environment that you're in, right?
yeah,
At least there's a lot of different qualifiers that separate everybody because as you said, no one in group is great at everything. Like they're going to be deficient in something else, and that's just lack of time.
Yep.
You
It's
can't
just
do
life.
everything in group in life, right?
Yeah.
You can be really good at everything in group, but I mean, you're going to be deficient in some areas, like,
Yeah.
and especially with the way we're structured, right? You can be the best Charlie in the group, but you're a shitty Delta. Well, obviously, you're going to be a shitty Delta because you don't do that. But you can get better at it, cross training and skills like that. But yeah, that's the common theme. It's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. You never stop and look around and appreciate it while you're doing it. In my case, I never took my phone out of my fucking pocket and took pictures, so I have no pictures of anything. Um, and that's one regret that I do have. So that is, I would say to you, don't have that regret. Take pictures with the
Luckily,
guys.
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay, good.
Every chance I get.
Obviously, you can't throw them up on the internet right now
Nope.
because you've got your
Nope.
bifurcated personality.
Yeah.
But yeah, take your pictures and tell the, like, because new guys come in, because now you're a senior dude, right? You're a senior, well, you're a senior junior dude. Um, so weird structure in SF because you could be an E7 and you're still, you're kind of a
Yeah.
junior sometimes. So
Inexperienced senior dude. Yep.
inexperienced. But yeah, just impress upon the guys because I wish I had photos just to look
Yeah.
at and things like that. And that is one thing that I try and tell everybody: take your phone out of your pocket when appropriate and take pictures and of things like that. But well, fuck, man, that kind of went by pretty quick. I got a few questions here for you.
Yeah. Share, brother.
Going on a whirlwind there. I'm going to have to modify some of these, maybe just one of them as we go along because you're still in, but we'll see where we go here.
Mhm.
But what is your response to thank you for your service?
I still don't hear it that much these days. So I'm less demonstrative of it. Um, all you can do is thank someone. Your support is appreciated. Your recognition is appreciated. Don't try to draw it out or you know let the pride of it come to you. But all you can do is thank him in return.
What's the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional forces?
A genuine willingness to do the unthinkable.
Pretty broad definition for unthinkable.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. What is the, okay, that's the one I'm going to have to redo here. Because usually the question is, what is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive? Where you are in your career right now, is there
Yep.
any point that you wish you could go back and relive or redo, knowing what you know now?
To relive, obviously, just for the fun of it. I was very fortunate enough to train with the Spanish special operations guys, and they were just the most welcoming, humble, and gracious hosts. I still have close contact with a lot of them. They were just unbelievably excellent partners, and we were fortunate enough we're a mobility team soon. We're mostly operating out of vehicles. We were fortunate enough to have the ability to do a boat hit with them. So we rode on their equivalent of the our Navy's special warfare combat crews. They drove us about an hour up the Spanish coast. What a torturous lifestyle we live. And got off, did our little training raid, which was an absolute disaster in many funny ways that I uh, can't recount. But I guess I can give a small one. It was my first. I had zero CQB experience in my team. I had just gotten done with a Cephalic Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat course, which gives like a 5-week shooting package. So I was the least spun up on the team on CQB, and these guys were all dialed in with each other. And I had never been around a flashbang before, and we were the opposition force. We hit the military barracks. The opposition force told us, or they told us in the brief, like, hey, these sections of these barracks are out of play, out of bounds, so don't even try to go in there. And we, got our guys, and we're starting our site exploitation, and all of a sudden they start shooting at us from one of the no-go zones, and Team Sergeant got a little riled up. He's like, all right, get a bang on every door. And so my buddy banged one door, got the guy, and then we went up to this next door, and I get up to it, and I'm right there. I get first light. For you listen that don't know, that means like I'm concentrating on that door opening. If that door opens, I smoke someone that comes through it, and it's all I'm focused on. I'm new to CQB, but I know that that's my singular job. And everyone stacks up. Team Sergeant's right there. He's like, all right, get a bang. And I'm sitting there just focusing on the first light. And he's like, get a bang. And I'm like, I'm freaking out because I don't know what to do. So he's kind of frozen, trying to focus on my position. And he goes, somebody get a bang on that door. My buddy produced one. He's like, hey, everyone, just relax. I've got it right here. It's going to be fine. And then he like kind of nodded at me, knowing I was new. He's like, you good? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, 1, 2, 3, and opens the door and throws the bang in. And like an idiot, instead of moving out of the way, I just looked at it and just sat and watched it. And it went off, and I rabbited in. And what we didn't know is that it was a closet full of Christmas decorations. And so I ran into the wall right away and had all this garland and glitter falling on me. So that was a pretty cool experience as a new guy. And I got to ride back down the Spanish coast, holding my partner by his belt so he could puke over the side while I was covered in glitter for an hour. So if I could relive one, it was probably that. That was a pretty dang fun night.
Sounds like it. Fuck.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the show goes many more years, and I can ask you the question after it's all said and done.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
when it comes on the other side. But what is the best piece of advice that you've received during your career?
It's doable. Straight up, plain and simple. If it's been done by other people, it can be done by you too. There's circumstance that plays into it, obviously, and I won't get into the philosophical portion of it, but it's doable. It's the best piece of advice I ever got. Specifically, I said there's nothing out there you can't do.
Yeah. I'll go into that here and more after we get offline here. But this last question is usually, what were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now? But now there's no then. Then is now, Spaceball style. So now we're just gonna say, what are you afraid of now?
Lack of purpose. And when I say afraid, I don't mean it's something that I surmise is going to happen, or it's but because I have found such purpose in multiple spheres of life. So, thank goodness. A lack of that would leave me devoid of knowing what to do, what direction to head, and so I sympathize with the guys who do get out and don't have a purpose, or feel they don't have a purpose, because it's absolutely everything.
I agree with you. As I said to somebody the other day, this right here is the first thing I've wanted to do since selection. And selection's all encompassing, and it went through to be a Green Beret and everything. But this is the first thing that I've wanted to do. So I know what you mean there. Once you lose your way and you don't have that, because it's tough with the purpose and things, and especially when you get in, there's reinforced purpose all the time, and you have to do it, or you'll get kicked out or go to jail or things like that. So there's many different avenues and people telling you what to do and how to do it, and the right way and the wrong way and all the other things. So, but well, 18 Good Guy, tell everybody how they can find you. I'll have links to your socials in the show description as well, the bleak show description.
So my main page is on Instagram, 1818 Good Guy, all one word. Same website, 18goodguy.com. I do merch drops every once in a while. I don't take any profit from it. So if you guys do end up buying something, it all either goes into the next batch of merch and or to charities of choice. You guys can follow along there. I do giveaways, sometimes do charity drives, physical events, try to include people on there. So if you want to get included in some way, those are the two ways to do it.
Fuck yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. You got anything for me?
That's it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate that. Bye, everybody.